Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Earlier this month, Mayor de Blasio released Next Generation NYCHA. It's a plan aimed at turning around the city's financially troubled housing authority. But just as the plan is being rolled out, Governor Cuomo is diverting $100 million in funding that had been set aside by the housing authority for roof repairs. Joining me now to discuss the impact all of this will likely have are two labor leaders who represent the housing authority's workforce. Gregory Floyd is president of the Teamsters Local 237, and Anthony Wells is president of Social Service Employees Union Local 371. Thank you both so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start first by saying, who do you represent when it comes to NYCHA, when it comes to the housing authority?
Well, Local 237 represents the managers down to the caretakers, everyone in between. We're the frontline service people, the maintenance workers, the elevator mechanics, and everyone who manages the buildings.
Okay, and you?
And we represent the social service employees, those who run the community and the senior centers, those who run the residential engagement program, and those who provide social services to NYCHA residents.
It's worth also pointing out for those who are maybe not entirely familiar, obviously a lot of our viewers do live in NYCHA buildings, but 400,000 individuals live in NYCHA properties, which is astounding. I mean, it's itself a major city if you put it all together. NYCHA faces this tremendous gap, a $17 billion gap. You know, we have covered the stories, other media outlets have covered stories about apartments falling apart, roofs falling in. The plan that Mayor de Blasio is saying is that there has to be a way to raise money. It's called Next Generation, but you have some concerns about it, in particular about taking what is called vacant or underused land and then having private development beyond it, even if that private development is half for affordable housing and half for market rate housing. Tell us why you object to it.
Well, one, there's no guarantee that the market rate is going to apply here. The developer is going to say, well, we give you half and we're going to have half for affordable housing. There's no formula, there's no guarantees in this life. And then current candidate, Mayor de Blasio, at our mayoral forum, and I will get the dates correctly, April 20th, and this is what he said about Mayor Bloomberg's infill plan. We need to stop it dead in its tracks. And we need to create an atmosphere of transparency, not secrecy. And he rolls out this plan. He didn't sit down with us because if he sat down with us, I would air my concerns and tell him my concerns, not on television, but right then and there, because you can't just say things and have it come to light, because I believe this is a plan that has a false bottom. I don't see where it's going to be revenue generating. I don't see this saving the housing authority, and we'll talk more about that throughout the show.
Right, but Mr. Wells, if Bill de Blasio, this big critic of the Bloomberg plan, which was going to do the same thing essentially, except the formula for how much you set aside for affordable housing was lower than what Bill de Blasio is proposing, isn't that a sign that the situation at NYCHA is so dire that even Bill de Blasio would take a plan that was started by Mike Bloomberg?
It's a sign that there's been no difference in how to address those problems. Clearly, the housing authority has issues and has problems, but you don't solve them by, one, privatizing services. You don't solve them by reducing services. You don't solve them in this manner, and it should be different. He's a different mayor than Mayor Bloomberg claimed to be. Let me give you an example. In the social services realm, he's going to contract out the remaining 57 community and senior centers, which are a big part of the NYCHA communities. You mentioned about NYCHA being a city put together. Well, as an entity, NYCHA, Public Housing in New York, is the most unique community and a big part of the community of New York. What this plan talks about, at least in the beginning stages that we fleshed out, is that he's going to privatize community centers.
But wait a second, he hasn't said that. He has said that there is the plan to move some employees from under NYCHA to the city. You feel that that's just a translation for eventually being privatized?
Oh no, he's met with, his administration has met with us, and they told us clearly on June 30th, the remaining 57 centers minus 15 senior centers will no longer be run by NYCHA. NYCHA feels that its job is totally as a landlord. And our belief is that NYCHA should be a unique landlord because they are in a unique position. So on our part, there's no speculation. They're very clear that they are no longer going to be in the business of running senior centers, community centers, and eventually they're going to be out of the business of providing direct services.
Did Bill de Blasio or his staff, the head of NYCHA, meet with you before rolling out Next Generation?
No, they did not. And I could tell you, Next Generation, they want to use this program called RAD, which is the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, and they want to convert the now apartments into Section 8 apartments using this formula. And I want to tell you what happened. That 75% of the apartments in San Francisco were converted to private apartments, and in Baltimore, we have about 50% of those units run by the same company, and the result is layoff of public employees and the residents who must now worry about rent increases and tenant rights.
So you feel that having private homes on NYCHA property and the changing of these workers going into now working for the city as opposed to NYCHA is just leading down the slippery slope to eventually NYCHA apartments being privatized?
That's where we're headed. And if you listen to what I have to say about before the press conference, the chair lady said, the ultimate goal is to deliver on the mayor's affordable housing commitment. We are part of the city, and that has to be, and we have to address the affordable housing crisis. That's not talking about NYCHA. That's talking about the mayor's promise to deliver on affordable housing.
Right, but they're also talking about how to make sure that people who live in NYCHA don't have water coming into their apartments and having mold grow.
Well, that's a totally separate issue.
I mean, it's a massive funding crisis, isn't it?
And
because the federal government has not been funding NYCHA
right.
the way it used to.
Well, the federal government has not been funding NYCHA. New York State has not been funding NYCHA over the years. Mm-hmm. No one disagrees that NYCHA needs major repairs, needs a better way of being managed, because part of this has been mismanagement. And they need to have a system that's responsive to the residents. Because once again, we're looking at NYCHA as if it's just a community, just buildings, and there's more than that. So what they need is a comprehensive plan that's developed in conjunction with the stakeholders.
Right.
Okay? Community groups, the city council, the mayor's office, NYCHA, and the unions.
Let's ask about a story that was on the cover of the Daily News today, which is that Governor Cuomo is not giving $100 million as had been apparently promised for roof repairs at NYCHA, but instead going to these pet projects to different lawmakers. What are your thoughts on that? What have you heard?
Well, I just read it about in the Daily News, but that seems to be a fight over who has control and how they're going to do the repairs and what's important. But NYCHA should not be a political ball for anyone. Okay? This is too an important issue to just regulate it to the $100 million is going to be split up, or the $100 million will be given this. It should be a comprehensive plan to do the repairs and do them as efficiently and expeditiously as can be. Because people who live in NYCHA are taxpayers of this city, and they deserve a decent place to live. They're working. DC 37 alone is over 15,000 municipal workers living there. We live in NYCHA, so we're not talking about outside. So this fight, and I haven't read up on it extensively, is a matter of who gets to do the $100 million and where. We're talking about services as well as repairs. The repairs must be made, and the services need to be maintained.
So you fault Governor Cuomo for dividing up this pot?
No.
You don't?
The $100 million is allocated to NYCHA. Now, how that gets disseminated, they can work that out. The $100 million is there. If NYCHA wants to do the roofs, I'm sure if they go and provide a plan to the governor and say, this is what we like to do, they can work something out. I believe the governor is concerned that the money is not wasted. When you read in the paper that they had a procurement problem and they couldn't keep track of why they were buying briefcases and who's selling off the NYCHA supplies and selling it off for pennies on the dollar, that's an alarming concern. It's a concern to the federal government, it's a concern to the unions, it's concerning to and alarming to anybody who's giving money to NYCHA. Now, that being said, NYCHA is going away from their program that they have, which is a call center, and now they want to funnel those calls into now this already flooded 311 system, taking it outside of NYCHA, putting it and asking people outside the agency to schedule repairs. They couldn't schedule the repairs inside the agency. Why are we now going to put our work and our tenants and residents in further jeopardy for repairs by giving it to some outside entity, a third party? Why can't we have those repairs scheduled by people on site in the development in real time.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Gentlemen, thanks so much for bringing attention to this really important issue. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's time for a break. It's time for a break. I'll be back with a preview of tomorrow night's program. Don't go away.